Dear students, today we will discuss about ignition system. In SI engine, we have seen carburetor supplies homogeneous mixture of fuel and air to combustion chamber. Then a spark is initiated by a spark plug before end of the compression. Now this spark is produced by a ignition system. So ignition system should provide sufficiently large voltage across the spark plug electrodes to effect the spark discharge. Also, it should supply the required energy for the spark to ignite the combustible mixture of fuel and air. Then we will discuss about classification of ignition system. Mainly ignition system is classified in two types. First one is battery ignition system, second one is magneto ignition system. Now first we will discuss about battery ignition system. Battery ignition system. In this system, the energy requirement for producing spark is obtained from a 6 to 10 volt battery. The details of the battery ignition system of 6-cylinder engine are shown in figure. Okay. Now we will study the components of system. The components are: first one is battery, second one is ignition switch, third one is ballast resistor, fourth one is ignition coil, fifth one is contact breaker, sixth capacitor, seventh distributor, eighth spark plug. Now we will study detail the components of battery ignition system. First one is the battery. A storage battery is used to provide electrical energy for ignition. It is charged by a dynamo driven by engine. It converts chemical energy into electrical energy whenever spark is required. A lead acid battery consists of number of cells connected together in series and each having potential of 2 volts when fully charged. Now second one is a ignition coil. Ignition coil is the source of ignition energy in ignition system. The purpose of ignition coil is to step up the 6 to 10 volt of battery to a high voltage sufficient to induce electric spark across the electrodes of spark plug. A typical ignition coil is shown in figure. It consists of magnetic core of soft iron sheet and two insulated conducting coils called A. primary coil windings and B. secondary windings. The secondary winding consists of about 21,000 tons of copper wire. It is wound close to core with one end connected to secondary terminal and other end grounded to primary coil. The primary winding located outside the secondary coil. It is generally formed of 200 to 300 tons of copper wire. The ends are connected to exterior terminals. Now the entire unit is enclosed in a metal conductor and form a compact unit. Now on the top of coil assembly is heavily insulated terminal block. It supports 3 terminals. Figure shows the two smaller terminal marked as switch wire, that is SW, and contact breaker, that is CB. The two ends of primary are connected to these terminals. Now as shown in figure, one end of secondary winding is connected to central high tension terminal in the distributor. The other end is connected to primary coil. This is the ignition coil. Now third one is the ignition switch. Now battery is connected to the primary winding of ignition coil through ignition switch. With the help of it, the ignition system can be turned on or off. Then fourth one is a ballast resistor. A ballast resistor is provided in series with primary winding to regulate the primary current. It prevents injury to spark coil by overheating if the engine should be operated for long time at low speed. The coil is made up of wire of such size that if the primary current flows continuously, the ballast coil reaches a temperature above that where this rapid increase in resistance occurs. This additional resistance in primary circuit holds the primary current down to safe value. Then fifth one is a contact breaker. This is a mechanical device for making and breaking the primary circuit of ignition coil. It consists of a fixed metal point against which another metal point bears, which is being on a spring loaded pivoted arm. Figure A shows making primary circuit and figure B shows breaking primary circuit. Then sixth one is a capacitor or condenser. Capacitor is a device that stores electrical energy in an electric field. It supplies electrical energy to the circuit coil when it is necessary. Then seventh one is a distributor. Distributor is a device which is used to distribute the ignition surges to the individual spark plugs. It is required to distribute ignition surges in a correct sequence and at a correct instance in a time. The contact breaker and spark advance mechanism are combined with distributor in a single unit. The distributor unit consists of several other auxiliary units. In the lower part of housing, there is a speed sensitive device or governor is present. The function of this is to advance the spark with increase in engine speed. Now, eighth one is a spark plug. It consists of two electrodes with a proper gap across which the high potential discharge to generate a spark and ignite the combustible mixture within combustible chamber. A sectional view of spark plug is shown in figure. The spark plug consists of a steel shell, an insulator and two electrodes. Now, please see the figure. Spark plug, in that central electrode to which the high tension supply from the ignition coil is connected. The other electrode is welded to the steel shield of plug. Now, this is the spark plug. We will discuss the operation of battery ignition system. The schematic diagram of battery ignition system for 4-cylinder engine is shown in figure. Now, when the ignition switch is closed, the primary winding of coil is connected to positive terminal of battery. The primary circuit is closed through breaker contacts, due to which a current flows in a circuit called primary current. This current produces a magnetic field in a core. Now, a cam driven by a engine shaft is arranged to open the breaker points whenever an ignition discharge is required. When the breaker points open, the current flow into capacitor which is connected across point. As the capacitor becomes charged, the primary current falls and magnetic field collapses. The capacitor then discharges into battery, reversing the direction of both primary current and magnetic field. It induces a very high voltage in a secondary winding of ignition coil. The high secondary voltage is led to proper spark plug by means of a rotating switch called distributor. Now, this high voltage produces a spark across two electrodes of spark plug and combustion of charge will be initiated. This is the operation of battery ignition system.